DEA rules that marijuana has no medical value. California appears poised to join the growing number of states that have legalized marijuana, even as the federal government is reaffirming its 46-year-old stance that pot is a top-tier illicit narcotic on par with heroin and LSD. The Drug Enforcement Administration announced Thursday that marijuana will remain classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, a designation reserved for highly addictive drugs with no proven medical use. Thousands of published studies and extensive anecdotal evidence have indicated marijuana can help with conditions such as epilepsy and chronic pain. But DEA Acting Administrator Chuck Rosenberg said a thorough review of the research, with input from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, determined cannabis treatments haven't yet been proven effective by controlled clinical trials and widespread acceptance from the medical community. If the scientific understanding about marijuana changes, and it could change, then the decision could change, Rosenberg said. But we will remain tethered to science. Cannabis advocates said they don't expect the DEA's ruling to adversely affect various marijuana legalization votes on the ballot in California and 7 other states this November. But the federal action underscored the continuing functional and financial limbo in which multi-million-dollar, or even multi-billion-dollar, legal cannabis industries find themselves in 24 states. Cannabis growers, distributors and retailers can't access banking services, forcing them to operate largely in cash. They can't write off typical business expenses come tax time. Derek Peterson, CEO of Irvine-based TerraTech, even got denied life insurance because of his involvement in the cannabis industry. Some sort of deal needs to be brokered to harmonize state and federal law so we're not constantly battling each other, said Aaron Herzberg, who runs the Costa Mesa-based marijuana real estate firm Calcan Holdings. Until then, he said, the federal government's view of pot will continue to diverge from that of the American public. The majority of citizens live in states where marijuana is available to people for medical purposes, Herzberg said. It seems like the DEA and federal government is just woefully behind the times and is not getting the message. The DEA did give advocates one reason to be hopeful Thursday by lifting a nearly half-century monopoly on who can grow marijuana for federally sanctioned research. The policy has meant that since 1968, only the University of Mississippi could supply marijuana for FDA-approved studies. The DEA insists it's never turned down a request from qualified researchers to access that supply. But the agency acknowledged there's mounting demand from researchers, so it's going to allow more growers to apply to become federally sanctioned suppliers. Dr. Igor Grant, a psychiatrist who oversees the Center for Medical Cannabis Research at UC San Diego, said he was reviewing the DEA ruling and couldn't comment on whether his center would apply to grow cannabis. But he said he was encouraged by efforts to expand access for researchers. There is significant evidence that cannabis possesses therapeutic value, and it is worthy of continued, even accelerated, investigation and development, Grant said. Actions that reduce obstacles to conducting serious, rigorous science regarding the use of cannabis to treat diseases are a good thing. TerraTech's Peterson sees Thursday's announcement on researching cannabis as long overdue. However, the federal government is being hypocritical, he said, by simultaneously asserting marijuana has enough potential medical benefits to justify changing research policies but also should remain a Schedule I drug. Congress placed cannabis in that category in 1970. The drug's classification has been reviewed periodically. The latest re-examination was prompted by a petition filed with the DEA 5 years ago by then Washington State Democratic Governor Christine Gregoire and then Rhode Island Republican Governor Lincoln Chafee. The decision by the DEA to continue to categorize marijuana in the same schedule as heroin, LSD and other very dangerous drugs shows the disconnect between the Obama administration and the common sense of the American people, said U.S. Representative Dana Rahabacher, Costa Mesa. Roughly 80% of Americans believe medical marijuana should be legal, according to recent polls. And the plant can be used to treat ailments in 25 states. Recreational use is allowed in 4 states plus Washington, D.C. If California passes Proposition 64 this November, 1 in 6 Americans would live in a state where adults would be allowed to freely use cannabis. The anti-legalization group Smart Approaches to Marijuana, which has donated $64,150 to fight Prop. 64, said the DEA's decision Thursday shows the government can open access to research without legalizing marijuana. But advocates said the federal government's action may well motivate states to press ahead with their own expanded cannabis programs. The federal government has, to some extent, become highly irrelevant in the conversation about legalizing marijuana, Herzberg said. This doesn't slow down anything as far as legalization on a state level in California or anywhere. But it's just disappointing. If elected, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has promised to move cannabis to Schedule II, a category that includes cocaine and methamphetamine. Some advocates are still holding out hope that Obama, whose administration has largely let states oversee their own marijuana programs, might reclassify the drug as a parting gift to supporters before he leaves office at the end of the year. But Rahab Acher, who recently acknowledged that he uses a medical marijuana cream to ease his arthritis, said he doesn't have confidence that the president will take action. The Obama administration has had the chance to correct a foolish and counterproductive policy, he said. Now it's up to the Congress and the next administration.